In the world of modern football, a new form of engagement has become deeply embedded in the fan experience, known as fantasy football. With millions of participants across the globe, fantasy football has not only altered the way fans interact with the sport, but has also in some ways begun to undermine the traditional essence of football fandom. If we talk about the history of fantasy games, fantasy football's roots trace back to the 1960s. Though it began to gain significant popularity in the 1990s, the first official fantasy football league was reportedly created in 1962 by Wilfred Winkelwench, a businessman from Oakland, California who was deeply involved in the American football scene. He set up a fantasy league where participants selected real-life NFL players and earned points based on their performances in actual games. This model grew in popularity especially with the advent of the internet, which made it easier for fans to track players' stats and engage in leagues with others. However, nowadays almost every sport has their own multiple fantasy games. One of the most concerning issues surrounding fantasy football is its connection to betting. Fantasy sports, in essence, turn the act of following a sport into an ongoing gamble. Users on the fantasy games are not spending actual money from their wallet, but they are given with some imaginary amount inside the game, which promotes a sense of gambling for a nurturing teenager. And in future, he may adopt the field of gambling in case he left himself a bit lucky or a master of fantasy leagues. In the past, being a football fan meant more than just watching players. It meant connecting with a club, a community, and a culture. Fans would go to the stadium, sing the songs of their teams, and live and die with every match result. But with the rise of fantasy football, fan identity has begun to shift from a team-focused loyalty to an individual player focus. As fantasy football increasingly involves fans in picking individual players to represent their teams, it creates a disconnection from the concept of supporting an actual football club. Fans are no longer interested in watching a match solely because their club is playing. Instead, they focus on how their fantasy team is performing. This leads to scenarios where a fan might find themselves cheering for a player from a rival team simply because that player is on their fantasy roster. Another effect is the dehumanization of players, which is most apparent when injuries occur. Fantasy managers may react with frustration or anger not out of concern for the well-being of the player, but because their points total has been negatively affected. This approach objectifies players, stripping them of their humanity and treating them as interchangeable assets, rather than individuals who deserve the same respect as any other professional athlete. While fantasy football undoubtedly offers a unique and engaging way for fans to interact with the sport, its impact on football culture is far from benign. By promoting a gambling mindset, eroding traditional fan loyalties, dehumanizing players, and prioritizing individual performance over team success, fantasy football risks damaging the very foundations that make football such a powerful and beloved sport. As fantasy leagues continue to grow in popularity, there is a pressing need to reconsider their influence on the sport's fan base and how they may be steering fans away from the true essence of football, a sport that is about clubs, communities, and a collective achievement, not just individual glory. Hope you agree with my point of view. Indeed, it's a very engaging and exciting activity, but as we all know, not everything that shines is gold. So don't forget to like and subscribe. See you on the other side.